Hello friends, it's Kristie Marcotte. Today I'm sharing the cards I made using Love From Lizi's September 2020 Super Card Kit. Since it's Love From Lizi's 4th anniversary, she always has a super kit as her September kit. The theme is Wonderland, and as you can probably guess, this is an Alice in Wonderland card theme. And this kit is packed full of crafty goodies. As I'm recording this voiceover, the kit and add-ons are still available, and I will have links provided in the description box below. So let's go ahead and get started with card number 1. I'm using a card sketch by Queen & Company, and if you are interested in any of the sketches I share, I have all of that information on my coordinating blog post, and that link is provided in the description box below. For this card, I selected 2 pattern papers. One has the rabbit blowing the trumpet, and then the bottom strip as a little black and white diamond design. I used a stitched rectangle die to cut both of those out, and I'm layering all of these pieces with some black cardstock. Now the kit does include several sheets of colored cardstock. It does not include black. And since I add so many layers to my cards, I always bring in some extra cardstock. I put that thin piece of black cardstock between the 2 pattern papers. It adds some separation and contrast. And now I'm adding a Love From Lizi straight style peel off in a light blue color. And I left a little gap since it's going to be covered up. And instead of using a standard circle die cut, I'm using this reverse scallop die cut. I'm following this sketch fairly closely. Before I adhere it to the card, I'm adding some scrap cardstock above and below where it's going over that black strip and also that peel off, just to keep everything nice and level. And then I'll just adhere that to my card using some liquid adhesive. When I cut out that top pattern paper with the rabbit and the cards, I made sure to leave at least the one rabbit on the left-hand side showing completely. I didn't want to cover it up with this image. So I'm using one of the ephemera pieces, so it's the deck of cards, or at least 4 cards. And then I stamped out the sentiment, "It would be so nice if something made sense for a change." Thought that was a perfect sentiment to use, especially for this year. I stamped it on some white cardstock and just fussy cut around the words. And I'm going to pop it up using some foam squares, although I'm only going to add the foam squares on the left-hand side where it goes off of that red scallop circle. And then I'll also pop up the cards. So I'm going to use some thicker foam dimension. Make sure to get good coverage so there isn't one area that sags at all. Attach it to my card, and then for a finishing touch, I'm adding some of these beautiful glitter enamel dots that are included in the kit. And I'm just going to put 2 of them in the lower right hand corner. Then I'll also add some shimmer using a Nuvo shimmer pen in the clear gloss color. And I will be using the shimmer pen on almost all of my cards just for that little extra sparkle. So there is my finished card, and this is card number 1. Now moving on to card number 2, using one of my favorite sketches. This is Mojo Monday sketch number 539. The background paper has an assortment of icons. Most of the pattern papers in this collection are on the busier side. So I will be covering up some of those images, but I wanted to make sure that the images in the upper right hand corner would be visible. So you have the Cheshire Cat and the pink flamingo up in that corner. I used some blue paper with a bunch of hearts for that strip on the left hand side. And then I'm just using some solid purple cardstock from my stash for this thin strip that goes across the lower portion of the card. Adding that scrap cardstock to keep all of it nice and level. And just for a little extra sparkle, I'm going to add some peel-offs. This is a pretty purple color in the mirror style. It's going to put them on the outside edge of this purple cardstock. And since I'm covering up that middle area, I don't need to have full pieces going all the way across. So this is always a great way to use up those small peel-off scraps. Put some ATG tape on the back of this panel and add it to some black cardstock. I do tend to use a lot of black cardstock. I think it adds some really good contrast with the papers in this collection. Put my card front onto a card base. I cut out a stitched circle die cut and then left it inside that piece that I cut it out from. I put it inside my mini MISTI. Since I'm going to be using some colored ink, I want to make sure to get a good stamped impression. So this way I can ink up that stamp several times. Now you can see that beautiful color, and this matches perfectly with the purple on this pattern paper. So the sentiment is, I'm not crazy, my reality is just different than yours, and it's a quote from the Cheshire Cat. And this stamp set is part of one of the 4 add-on stamp sets that are available. So I'm going to use that same purple cardstock and add a banner in the upper left-hand corner, following this sketch very closely this time. Before I adhere my sentiment circle, I'm going to use some scrap cardstock and just fill in those areas where it goes off of the other layers. Then I'll adhere it in place using some liquid adhesive. I love this sketch. I use it so often. It's perfect for featuring 2 pattern papers and then just bringing in some solid cardstock for the other parts. I'll add a couple of the purple glitter enamel dots in the upper left-hand corner. And then I wanted to add some extra sparkle. I'm using some of the mini heart peel-offs in, I think it's the mauve moon dust color. It was in a previous Love From Lizi kit. And I'm just going to cover up the hearts that are on that sentiment. So I'm trying to make sure to get them nice and straight. And that color matches beautifully with the ink and the purples in that pattern paper. So there is my finished card, and this is card number 2. Now moving on to card number 3. The card sketch is from OWH. It's number 146. Now, even though this sketch is designed for a vertical card, I'm going to make it horizontal. And the reason I decided to flip this sketch is so that I could have enough of the rabbit image showing in the upper right-hand corner. Vertically, it would have been pretty close. I might have had to trim off its ear or maybe a little bit of the watch. So this just worked out better. I'm using some more of that diamond black and white paper for the strip going across the card. I love this pattern paper. It matches really nicely with a lot of the designs. So I really tried to stretch that piece. I added a black peel off to that diamond pattern paper to add some contrast. And then I'm layering this on some dark teal cardstock. This is something that I have in my craft room, and it matches perfectly with that background color of the pattern paper. And I'm using some of the green cardstock that's included in the kit, using it for that banner. Now it does end up to be too short, so I will be fixing that here in a moment. I put my card front onto a card base. And then for my image box, I have a shorter and wider rectangle than what's indicated on the sketch. And I wanted to add some color to it since I'm going to be putting some ephemera pieces on here. So I'm using some Distress Oxide ink in the Lucky Clover color. And then I'll be layering that piece on the same dark teal cardstock. And then before I adhere that in place, I want to lay out all of the images. So I have 3 ephemera pieces. I have Mad Hatter's hat and then 2 of the teacups. I'm just trying to figure out placement for all of those images. Then after moving them around a bit, I end up going back to what I had in the first place. Still not going to adhere those yet. For the sentiment, I stamped out "We're all mad here." And this stamp is part of the set that's included in the kit. I'm just going to fussy cut around those words, and then I'll be adhering it to the right-hand side of the images. So this is where I realized that green banner is way too short because it's going to be covered up by the sentiment. So I just peeled it up, used my scissors, cut it in half, and then I'll adhere it further to the right. So there is that gap but it's all going to be covered up, so no one's going to know that I cut that green strip too short. So now I can go ahead and adhere this rectangle piece. I'm going to put some scrap cardstock on the upper area where it goes off of those other layers. Use some liquid adhesive and adhere it to my card. Try to make sure to get it nice and straight. And then I can start attaching all of the ephemera pieces. I'll glue Mad Hatter's hat down first, and then I'm going to pop up the cups using some foam dimensional squares. I love the green cardstock that's included in the kit and how it really brings out that green band on Mad Hatter's hat. I'll admit I'm not a big Alice in Wonderland fan, but I was curious what the numbers on Mad Hatter's hat stood for. So I did a little internet search, and it turns out that's a price tag. Hatters would sell hats, including the one they are wearing. So Mad Hatter's hat sells for 10 shillings and 6 pence. I thought that was interesting. For the sentiment, before I adhere it down, I will be putting some foam squares on the right-hand side of it, and then also some extra cardstock, just trying to keep it all nice and level. And then I'll just tuck it underneath the cups on the right-hand side. And then to finish off the card, I'm pulling out some more of these glitter enamel dots, just using the green this time. Put a few of them around the hat in the upper left-hand corner, and then just one more above the sentiment. And then later I did pull out that Nuvo shimmer pen and added it to the band on the hat and also the T in each of the cups. So moving on to card number 4. This is another sketch from Queen & Company. Really not going to be following it very closely though. Sometimes I use card sketches just for inspiration. I'm using this yellow, purple, and pink diamond pattern paper for the background, adding a strip of purple cardstock to the lower portion, then using some gold holographic peel-offs to go on both sides of that purple cardstock. Adds a lot of beautiful sparkle. Then I'll be layering this panel on some gold pearlescent cardstock. And this is part of the pearlescent bundle. It's one of the add-ons. I love using the specialty cardstock that Lizi offers. Now I know I should have cut out the center of this paper, but I was just busy crafting and sometimes I forget. But don't worry, I will do it for all of the other cards where I feature that pearlescent paper. I'll put my card front onto a card base. Now instead of using those 3 tags that are indicated in the sketch, I'm just going to use an assortment of ephemera. I have 3 blooms in pink and then a bunch of different sprigs and leaves that I'm going to make this little floral arrangement. So I lay them out on my card and now I'm just going to glue them in place. And I did speed this portion up quite a bit. The only flower I'm going to pop up is the large pink one in the center. So all of the others I'm just gluing straight down using some liquid adhesive. So I'll use some thin foam squares for that center flower. For the sentiment on this card, I'm using one of the acetate sentiments that's included in the kit. There are 5 different sentiments and they're printed in this beautiful gold foil. Now since it is on acetate, it's always tricky of how you're going to adhere these to the card without the adhesive showing through. So I find the best way is to run it through my mini Xyron machine. That way it has solid adhesive all on the back, and then when I put it on my card, you can't see any little spots of adhesive. Once I added the sentiment to my card, I felt like I needed a few more little sprigs to my bouquet. So I'm adding a few more little pieces, just tucking them in, and it still seemed a little out of balance. So I'm using the yellow ribbon that's included in the kit. I've already gone ahead and tied a bow, and I'm just going to attach it to the lower portion of that pink bloom in the center, just using some glue dots. I felt like that bow really helped balance out some of the florals. Now I'll add a couple of the yellow glitter enamel dots, just putting one on both sides of the sentiment. And then I'll be pulling out that shimmer pen and adding it to all 3 of the pink flowers. So even though this is an Alice in Wonderland themed kit, there's still plenty of ephemera pieces and papers that you could use for other card themes. So there is my finished card, and this is card number 4. Now moving on to card number 5. The card sketch is from Freshly Made Sketches. It's number 51. I'm using some of the smaller diamond pattern paper for the background, and then this red background paper with lots of the Alice themed icons all over it for this strip going down like more on the right hand side. I'm layering the 2 pieces in this dark teal cardstock. I did use a scallop border die for the right hand side. Doesn't show a whole lot, but it does add a little extra detail. Then I'll use some of the peel-offs that are included in the kit. This is a new red color. Just putting one on the outside edge of that red pattern paper, just for a little extra sparkle. I like to leave the peel-offs just a little bit longer than the card panel, and then I tuck the end behind just to make sure it's not going to come off later on the card. So I'll just layer this piece on some more of that teal cardstock, add my card front onto a card base, then I can start working on the sentiment. So I've already stamped this out. The sentiment is, "Those who don't believe in magic will never find it." And that sentiment is included on one of the add-on stamp sets. Then I'll also be using the key stamp, which is included with the kit. I'm going to be doing some heat embossing, so I'm stamping it using some Versamark ink. I placed this in my mini MISTI just to make sure I had a nice solid impression. I'm using Love From Lizi's Golden Crown embossing powder. It's a beautiful gold color. So I have the first key stamped out. I can see that lovely color, and then I'll do the same thing to the right hand side of the sentiment, just flipping the key the other direction. So I'll get that one heat embossed. So now those keys frame that sentiment, and it goes perfectly since it has the keyhole as well. And I'm going to layer this piece on some dark red cardstock. The red cardstock has a linen texture to it, so I did add some liquid adhesive along with the ATG just to make sure that piece wasn't going to come off later. And then before adhering this sentiment to my card, I'm going to add that scrap piece of cardstock to the left-hand side where it goes off of the other layers. Then I'll put some liquid adhesive on the back and attach this piece to my card. And I did put the sentiment a little higher than what's indicated on the sketch, since I didn't want to cover up the Alice image. I was going to add some of the red glitter enamel dots, but I changed my mind and decided to use some of the sequins from the kit instead. I pulled out some of the gold and also the red sequins, but after placing them on my cards, I decided to just go with the gold. Sometimes I'm very indecisive when I'm trying to add embellishments to my cards. Once I decide to just use the gold, using some liquid adhesive to attach all of those sequins to my card. And then just one final finishing touch, I'm using some Glossy Accents and adding it to the keyhole. That would make it pop out just a little bit more. So there is my finished card, and this is card number 5. Now moving on to card number 6. I won't be using a card sketch this time. I'm going to be using one of the add-on dies. There are 2 different dies. This one is It's Always Tea Time, and the other one is We're All Mad Here. Both of the dies are large and will fill an A2 size card. So I cut out the die cut using some pearlescent red cardstock, and then I took the dark blue cardstock that's included in the kit and ran the die through that just to get the negative part. I put some adhesive on the back of this frame and then added some acetate since I'm going to be making a shaker card. Now I'll add some foam tape to build up my shaker window. And I'm using these thin foam strips that are made by scrapbook.com. So I did speed this portion up quite a bit. I want to make sure to get all of these extra little pieces. Didn't want to have any area that's going to sag at all. Now I end up only doing one layer of the foam, and I really should have done two. It would have allowed the sequins to move around a little bit more, but this still just worked fine. I used some anti-static powder and put it all around the outside edges just so those sequins wouldn't stick. Scooped in some of the sequins, and now I'm just flipping a lot of the sequins over. I feel like when I dump them in, they're all upside down. So I wanted to have at least some variety before I seal them all in place. Because I'm only adding that one layer of foam, I like to shake that full panel, trying to make sure the sequins aren't piled up on top of each other and getting stuck inside the shaker. I pulled off the backing on all of the tape, and then I'm going to seal that all in place with a piece of white cardstock. Then I'll be able to place that die cut right into that opening. I'm going to use some liquid adhesive and try to cover all of the areas of this die cut. There's a lot of little details. Now this is a fun die cut because you could cut out some of those smaller images and use them on your card. In fact, I'm going to be doing just that on my bonus card toward the end of this video. So once I have this all pressed down and adhered in place, I'm going to put this card front onto a card base, leaving just that 1/8 of an inch of the white card base showing. So other than the gold sequins, it's a very patriotic looking card. But since there are gold sequins, I decided to add some more gold. I'm using some of the gold holographic peel-offs, adding one around the outside edge of this card. Have a little bit hanging off, and then I'm going to use my X-Acto knife and miter the corners together. It's a little harder to do since I have this on top of foam and it's not just on solid paper. So I had that little bit of cushion, but I was still able to do that. So add just a little extra detail. And now I'm pulling out some of Love From Lizi's mini star peel-offs in the gold glitter color. Just adding a few of them in the upper and lower corner. So there is my finished card, and this is card number 6. Now moving on to card number 7. This sketch is from MFT. It's number 504. And I think this is my favorite card from the whole set, but do let me know which card is your favorite. For the background paper, I'm using this fun blue bubble paper, and it has a splatter look of glitter in the background, even though it's not actually glitter. I'm going to layer this on some blue cardstock, and I did cut out that panel using a stitched rectangle die. And then I'm going to add one more layer with some of the gold pearlescent cardstock. You can see I did cut out the center this time, so I'll be using that later. Just putting some scrap cardstock in place of that cutout. That way there isn't that noticeable dip. Put my card front onto a card base. And then for the banner, I'm just using some more of that blue cardstock. I am flipping this sketch, putting everything to the left instead of to the right. Those 3 strips in the background, I'm using that cutout piece with some of that gold pearlescent paper. So I did make sure to save that cardstock and use it again. Before I attach this blue banner, I will be putting some scrap cardstock on the upper and lower area where it goes off of those gold strips. And I did use some thicker cardstock for those little pieces, since that gold cardstock is on the thicker side. I'll put some ATG tape on the back, and then I can adhere this banner onto my card. Trying to make sure it was straight. And then I'll be using one of the Alice ephemera pieces. This little girl has the brunette color hair. I'm going to pop her up using some thin foam squares. Always make sure to get good coverage so there isn't an area that sags. Remove all of the backing. And then I'll just be centering her on that blue banner. For the sentiment, I'm using another one of the acetate sentiments. This one is Best Wishes. So I already ran that through my Xyron machine, and I'm just going to place it in the lower right-hand corner. Since the background paper isn't too busy, you can still read that sentiment easily. And then finishing touches, I'm adding some of the gold glitter mini star peel-offs. Putting a couple in the lower corner by the sentiment, a few of them in the upper left-hand corner above the image, and then I decided to add some of the tiny stars in the background to go along with that gold splatter. I love the new peel-off styles. There's the mini stars, mini circles, and also mini hearts, and the stars are definitely my favorite. Although the smallest size is super tiny, so sometimes it's tricky to get off of the paper. I'm also going to add some of the shimmer to her bow. And then I thought I'd add one of the gold mini stars to the center of the bow. But I didn't really like the look, so I took that one off and instead added one of the small blue glitter enamel dots. And since I already had some of that shimmer pen on the bow, I did adhere it using some liquid adhesive just to make sure it's not going to pop off later. So there is my finished card, and this is card number 7. Now moving on to card number 8, not using a card sketch this time, and overall this is a very simple card. There are several different floral pattern papers included in the kit, so these are perfect for any theme card that you need. I used some solid yellow cardstock that I just had from my stash. It matched that yellow background nicely. And then using a few of the red peel-offs that are included in the kit, put one on both sides of that yellow cardstock. I'm going to add this panel onto some dark red cardstock. And this is also a color that I already have. Put my card front onto a card base, leaving that 1/8 of an inch of the white card base showing. And then for the image, I'm going to use one of the larger floral ephemera pieces, this beautiful bouquet. Then I'll pop it up using some foam dimensional tape. Even though the background paper is fairly busy, since there is a lot of white around the ephemera image, it still stands out enough. And then also popping it up with the dimension tape really helps it stand out. So I'm just going to add this to the center. I'm using another of the acetate sentiments, this time Sending Love. I'll just center that on this yellow cardstock. I'm also going to add a couple small banners in the upper right hand corner. I have one cut out of that yellow cardstock and the other in the red. And then I trim the red one down just a little bit. Overlap the two, having the red banner off to the right. Glue those using some liquid adhesive, and then I'll pull out some more of the glitter enamel dots. These are definitely one of my favorite items from the kit. Put 2 of them on the banner and then just 2 small yellow pieces next to the sentiment. Then as always, pulling out that Nuvo shimmer pen and adding it to all of the flowers, just for that extra little sparkle. So there is my finished card, and this is card number 8. Now moving on to card number 9. Again, I won't be using a card sketch, and this is a fairly simple card. For the background paper, I'm using this purple and yellow diamond paper with all of the little keyholes, and then I'm going to use some of the purple ribbon. I'm going to put 2 rows in the center of the card. So first I'm going to put down some 1/4 inch score tape. And then I'll put 1 piece of the purple ribbon down, trying to make sure to get it nice and straight. So I'm using the lines on my mat to help guide me. And then I'll put the other piece, just leaving a tiny little gap between the two. I'll wrap the ends around the back of that panel, adhere those in place using some more score tape. And I'll Put some ATG on the back and layer this panel in the dark blue cardstock that's included in the kit. Put this card front onto a card base, and I can start working on the image and the sentiment. I cut out a stitched oval die cut that'll feature my teapot and teacup ephemera piece. Before I adhere that oval down, I'm going to put those scrap pieces of cardstock. This is something you're going to see me do all the time. I used to not add those pieces, and when I look back at some of my cards, I've noticed that little dip, there's like a dent on the paper since I didn't have everything level. So now it's been a little bit of an obsession to make sure that all of those pieces are level. I'm going to pop up the ephemera piece using some foam dimensional tape. I love the variety of sizes with all of the ephemera pieces. Some of them are small, and then there's some nice big pieces like this one that you can really have as your focal point on the card. I'll just center this piece on my card. And for the sentiment, I'm using one of the add-on stamp sets. This sentiment is Drink Me. Thought that worked perfectly with the tea ephemera piece. I stamped this on some light purple cardstock, and I'm just going to fussy cut around the words. And then I'll be attaching it to the lower right-hand corner. I'm going to add some scrap cardstock on the right-hand side. Just that very left-hand upper corner is going to go over that oval die cut. I'll just attach it in place using some liquid adhesive. And then finishing touch, pulling out some of the enamel glitter dots in the purple color. Putting 3 of them in the upper left-hand corner and then 2 above the sentiment. Then I also decided to add 1 to the very top of the teapot. I'm going to put some Nuvo shimmer pen on the tea and also different parts of the teapot and teacups. So there is my finished card, and I love how this one turned out. I'm not a purple fan, but I really like the bold colors in this design. Moving on to card number 10. Again, no card sketch. I'm using the rest of this heart pattern paper. It has the blue in the background and a bunch of little hearts all over it. Used a scalloped rectangle die to cut out that panel. I'm going to layer that on some of the gold pearlescent paper. Fill in that cutout piece with some scrap cardstock. Put my card front onto a card base. And I thought this pattern paper looked like the sky with a whole bunch of little hearts falling down. So I'm making a little scene. Decided to have purple for the ground, so I have a little hillside. And then I'm adding the 2 sweet pink flamingos. I'm going to pop them up using some foam dimensional tape. Making sure to get good coverage on them, including their skinny little legs. Pull off the backing, and they're going to stand in the center of that purple hill. I didn't want to add the greens, and there isn't any green in that pattern paper. And then just for a little extra decoration, I'm using some of the smaller ephemera pieces. I have 2 different flowers and then some of the gold leaves. Just going to add those to the lower right-hand corner. And then for the sentiment, I'm using another of the acetate pieces. The sentiment is Love You Always, but since it's too long to fit on the card, I decided to cut off the word always, so I just have Love You. Ran that through my Xyron machine, and then I'll attach it to my card just underneath the flamingo on the left side. In finishing touches, I'm going to add a couple of gold sequins in the upper right-hand corner. Trying to decide which one I wanted to have as the top, the larger or the smaller. And my fingers got stuck to that second sequin, so I had to grab another one since it was covered in glue. So there is my finished card, and this is card number 10. Now I could have stopped at 10 cards since this is a 10 card video, but I decided to add a bonus card since I wanted to make a slimline card. There's enough pattern paper and ephemera included in this kit. You could easily make dozens of cards, but I'm going to stop at 11. So for this card, I'm using some blue cardstock for my background layer, and I used the rest of this black and white diamond pattern paper. I had enough where I could cut 2 of these stitched square die cuts, and I used the same square die for 1 black piece. I wanted to have the look of 3 squares in the background, but the slimline card isn't actually wide enough for this size square. And I don't have any rectangle dies that were the perfect size to fit in between the 2 squares. So I just tucked some of that black die cut underneath the square on the left hand side, and it's going to be covered up, so you're not going to see that little area where they meet. I adhered that whole panel onto my card base, and now I'm going to use the Alice ephemera piece, the traditional Alice with the blonde hair, and I'll pop her up using some foam dimensional tape, and then I'll adhere her to the card right over the seam of that black cardstock and the square on the left. Now for the sentiment, I've already gone ahead and stamped this out. It is "This is my dream, I'll decide where to go from here" by Alice in Wonderland. Stamped that on an oval die cut, layered it with some black cardstock. Then I'll adhere it to the right hand side of the card, trying to center it on that square on the right. And as I mentioned earlier in the video, I was going to cut one of the images off of that large die. It's always tea time. I love this teeny tiny key. So I used some of the gold pearlescent paper, cut out several of the keys. Wasn't sure how many I needed, so I have quite a few. I'm going to glue one of them underneath the sentiment. There was that little bit of a gap underneath the sentiment on that oval. And then I'm going to add 3 of the keys to the right hand side of Alice on that black cardstock. Trying to have them go different directions. And she has her hands stretched out up and down. It kind of looks like she might be reaching maybe for one of the keys. Trying to decide what direction I wanted that last key. I felt like the 3 keys next to Alice was enough, so I'm not going to use the others that I cut out, but I still need to balance out this card. So I'm going to add some small stitched circle die cuts. I'm going to put one on the right hand side. I did trim off the end so it's flush to that edge, and then on the left hand side I'll do the same with the gold circle, and then add the black one on top. Pulling out some more of the enamel dots, I'm going to use the blue, put a couple of them on the circles on both sides, and then I'll also put one above Alice. Couldn't really decide where I wanted that final one, and did end up putting it right above Alice on the left hand side. I'm going to add a little bit of shimmer to her bow. And then one final finishing touch after I had this sitting on my desk, I wanted to use some of the red glitter hearts. So I'm using the smallest size, and I'm covering the hearts from the sentiment. And these are almost the same size as that heart stamp. So I'm trying to be really careful to line it up so I can't see any of that black image. So it's just a tiny little pop of red, but I think it really adds some extra shine and sparkle to the card. So there's my finished card, and that is my bonus card number 11. Now here's just a quick recap of the 11 cards I made using Love From Lizi's September 2020 Super Card Kit. As I'm recording this voiceover, the kit is still available, but it is a monthly kit, and Lizi's kits sell out every single month. So if you are interested, I would suggest not waiting. I will have links provided in the description box if you'd like to purchase this kit or any of the add-ons. I had so much fun making all of these cards using this kit. Now here's everything I have left over. I still have 2 full sheets of cardstock and almost 2 full sheets of the other 2 color cardstocks since I brought in a ton of my own. I have some scraps left over and still 12 full sheets of pattern paper. So you can see this kit is full of paper. Lots and lots of the acetate sentiment pieces and tons of the ephemera. There were 100 pieces of ephemera included in this kit. I have lots of the peel-offs, still some of the sequins, enamel dots, and a ribbon. And then of course the stamp set, and it does come with the image dies. I didn't end up using any of those. And the kit also includes a pad of sticky notes. It's designed so you could write your sentiment on that sticky note, put it inside the card, and then the card recipient can remove that sticky note and then reuse that card and send it to somebody else. It's a really fun idea and a great way to reuse your cards. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.